are some of the most iconic sneakers in the entire world, and people completely obsess over not creasing their Air Force Ones. The problem is Air Force One leather is terrible and it creases within the first wear. And so Nike came up with a little solution to that problem, and they call it the Air Force 1 Fresh.
Gotta be fresh.
Allegedly, this version has softer leather, it's easier to clean, and it's more breathable. So we bought a pair of each to cut them in half, run a bunch of tests to see if it's just more of Nike's fancy marketing and jargon to sell more Air Force Ones, or is there actually some information that we can get from testing these to prove that the Air Force 1 Freshes are actually more crease resistant, breathable, and all the other things that Nike is claiming about them. So for a really quick and brief history of the Air Force Ones and how we kind of got to this point where people are trying not to crease their sneakers, it all started in 1982 when the Air Force One was released at a ridiculously high price at the time of $89.99. And unfortunately, it just didn't take off very well. It was the first shoe that ever featured Nike Air. It had all this hype behind it. They thought it was gonna sell, and it just didn't. And then in 1984, Nike wanted to discontinue the shoe, but in 1985, Nike distributed 3 colorways of the Air Force Ones to a trio of shoe retailers in Baltimore, and within days, all 3,000 pairs of the newly re-released shoes were completely out of stock. And this quick sell in these 3 shops helped create the Color of the Month program, where they released different colors of the Air Force Ones each month. And that continued from 1986 all the way up to 1991, where they were releasing a new colorway almost every single month. Air Force Ones. And then somewhere in the mid-90s is when they released the triple white, the all-white Air Force Ones that most people know Air Force Ones for. And then for the next 5 or 6 years, they really ramped up production and started doing premium versions, special editions, and really started bringing the hype to the Air Force Ones. And then by the early 2000s, they became a staple in the hip hop and music industry with the names of Jay-Z, Nelly, G Unit, all basically shoehorning an Air Force One reference into every one of their albums, I feel like. Like for instance, that song that's like stomping your Air Force Ones.
Stomping in my Air Force One.
For some reason when I was a kid, I thought it meant the plain Air Force Ones, but now I know that I was completely wrong. And in this era is really where that sentiment around wearing a fresh pair of Air Force Ones and not having them creased started to become a status symbol, because an uncreased pair of Air Force Ones showed that they were basically brand new and that you had enough money and status to be able to wear brand new shoes whenever you wanted. And that perpetuated all the way through the sneaker industry up until today, where people still are obsessed with not creasing their sneakers when they are inherently a creasing product. So now you kind of understand why the creasing matters and how it came to be. So now let's start dissecting these things and really see if Nike is just leaning into the fact that people don't want their sneakers to crease, or if they actually engineered a type of leather and a construction that prevents creasing more than the originals. So what is the actual claim that Nike makes? Well, on their website it says, "You can't stop aging, but the Air Force One Fresh gets pretty close. Soft textured leather helps conceal creasing and is easy to clean. The debossed branding, which replaces the woven label, pairs with extra laces so you can eat that jelly donut in peace, and the perforated sock liner keeps it airy and breathable. Now there's really no reason not to rock a white on white." So now let's first identify what's actually different between these 2 shoes. So first, the biggest difference you might notice is the lining. So the Freshes have a fake leather lining, and we could tell that because we burnt it and it just completely melted and disintegrated. And the originals have a fabric lining. And so the idea behind this was the fabric will grab stains and kind of yellow over time, versus synthetic leather will not. It also has a fully synthetic leather tongue for the same reason, and we burned it the same way to make sure it was synthetic. And then oddly, they changed a few panels from real leather to fake leather. So we tested the swoosh is fake. We tested the lace keeper up here, this little panel, that's fake as well. The heel tab that has the debossed logo is also fake. And all those same pieces are leather on the regular Air Force Ones. So for $30 more, they added more fake leather and took away more real leather. Kind of odd, right? One I almost forgot about is that insole is also fake leather topped, whereas the regulars are fabric topped. But how good is the actual leather? So let's grade this leather first. So we burnt the leather, and it's just like the old Air Force Ones, where you got that really heavy coating of plastic on top that basically just melts away. It has that same fake print embossed into it, and we cut a cross section, put the macro lens on it, and it still has that really heavy coating on top. The Fresh pair might not have quite as much as the originals, but it still is a really heavy coating of plastic. And plastic is a huge part of why these shoes crease so easily, because the natural leather still creases and wrinkles, but this fake plastic coating on top, it almost separates and bends at a different rate than the leather underneath. And so that's why you get these little bubbles and these folds and these wrinkles that you don't usually see in a full leather shoe. So right off the bat, it's already set up for failure because of how heavy that plastic coating is on top. And so if I were to grade both of these leathers, I'd put them both in that C category because of how heavy the coating is, the fake print, and how little grain there is in the cross section. But the grade of leather isn't everything, and that doesn't tell you the whole story of if a leather is going to crease or not, because a lot of that has to do with the temper of the leather. Because leather comes in a bunch of different tempers, all from super hard, firm leather all the way down to glovey leather that's just malleable and really soft. It's like folding a piece of paper versus folding a piece of fabric. The paper is going to take a crease versus fabric is just going to fold and roll and flatten back out. Same thing with glovey leather that's like fabric and firm leather that's like paper. So the idea behind this would be a softer leather isn't going to fold as much, it's not going to roll, and it's not going to wrinkle as much. So we cut a couple swatches out of that, and just to see how firm they are, we hold it straight out. And the fresh leather is just a little bit softer, but it's such a little difference that it could easily be what part of the hide it came from, what part of the shoe it came from, and so it's not enough of a difference that I'd really say it will make a huge difference. But the only way to really tell is just to crease these things to death. So what we wanted to do is just put these shoes on and do the complete opposite of what people usually do these shoes, and we just purposely crease them over and over. And we started with 10 creases, and as you can see, there's maybe a little bit of creasing going on, moved up to 25 creases, and it does look like the regular Air Force Ones are creasing more than the Freshes. So we're like, okay, maybe we got something here. Then we get to 50 creases, and you can start to see there is a little bit of a difference here, and they're starting to crease and roll in different ways. Then at 50 creases, Brody's calves were tired, so we took them by hand and just creased them 100 times more. And as you can see, they're pretty similar, but they folded and rolled in different ways. Like if you look at the Fresh pair, you've got lots of little rolls that are almost look like the top coat is separating from the leather. But if you look at the regular Air Force Ones, you could say they creased more, but the creases are a lot bigger. And to me, it almost looks better to have these big rolls and folds rather than these tiny little creases and the leather separating, because this just looks like you've worn your shoe. This looks like it's made out of terrible leather. So technically the Fresh pair creased less and they look more new, but I still would rather just have a natural creasing leather in the regular Air Force Ones. But I can see how someone would want this over that. So not the concrete proof that we were hoping for. And to be honest, this creased a lot more than I expected it to, especially for a sneaker that Nike advertised as creasing less. That's not even a full day's worth of wear, and both of them are still severely creased. But what about the stain resistance and being able to keep these shoes clean? Well, the best way to test that is just drizzling that ketchup and mustard all over these things. So we went outside, drizzled it all over, rubbed it in to see how much the leather actually absorbed those stains. And the leather itself, there's not any difference between the two. The mustard still stained it, the ketchup wiped off just fine, but the real difference is in the different types of lining. Because as you can see, that fabric lining is just a disaster versus the fake leather lining cleaned up a lot nicer. So at least that is better than the original Air Force Ones. But also, how many times are you spilling that much stuff on the inside of your shoe? There's not a whole lot of difference. It's only that little bit of a rim that you're gonna get a little benefit from. But that's not the final claim. They also claim it's more breathable, which I have my doubts about because synthetic leather is almost impregnable. It's less breathable than real leather, and it's significantly less breathable than fabric, especially this like jersey fabric on the inside. And the problem is it's not only lined on the inside, but the insole also has that fake leather. And so you're trapping those vapors and that sweat and that moisture around your ankle and underneath your foot in the Freshes. When the originals, it would absorb into there, and maybe it would stain it to give it a little bit of yellowing, but it would absorb it and allow it to breathe more. But to put it to the test, we wanted to put it on the breathability tester. And as you can see, there's not a whole lot of difference because these shoes just are not generally very breathable. I get what they were going for, but their three big points kind of contradict each other. You get the stain resistance, but the fake leather makes them less breathable. You get the softer leather that allegedly makes it crease less, but it creases in a worse way. So not looking great for these, but that's not the whole story. Maybe they've done something on the inside. Maybe there's something we're missing here with the lining. So let's cut these things in half and see if there's any difference at all between the Freshes and the regulars. But first, let's see if there's actually an air unit in this and test the PSI. So before we cut it, we stuck our pressure gauge in there. And this is one of the best readings we've ever had. It didn't really drop too much, and it was a good solid reading. So the Freshes at least have a solid air unit in them that have a good amount of pressure. So now let's cut them in half. All right, got it cut in half. Let's see what's inside. So they are the exact same on the inside. The air unit and the midsole's the same, the cup sole's the same, the insole's slightly different, but they're still built with a strobel stitch construction. So really the only difference between these shoes are what we've talked about, like the softer, more malleable leather, the replacement of the fabric with the fake leather, and the lack of breathability because of it. So are they worth the $30 extra to get the fresh pair that's allegedly doesn't crease more, that's allegedly more breathable, and allegedly more stain resistant? Really the only thing that, the benefit of this shoe is it is slightly more stain resistant. But by the time you're gonna really reap the rewards of having a stain resistant lining, your shoe's gonna be creased to death anyway. I like the concept of this shoe on the surface, but it just doesn't work out like Nike wanted it to. After recording this, I'm gonna wear my right foot, the fresh, the left foot, the regulars, and just wear them to the gym every day and see if I can tell a difference, and here are the results. So I took these to the gym for one single day, and immediately there's a giant difference between these two. So let me show you just the regular Air Force Ones first. Let me get you all focused in here. Okay, we got some creasing in there, little hairline, like little guys there and there. Nothing too crazy though. Now look at the freshes. Look how bad this is. I almost re-recorded this whole video because of how horrible the creasing is compared to the regular Air Force Ones. This is only, like, I'm not a gym rat. I go for like half an hour, and look at how different they are. So this has gotta be the absolute worst version of like marketing BS and jargon that we've ever seen in any boot. And it's the worst offender. Like this shoe is designed to crease less, and it immediately creases more and significantly more in a worse way than the regular Air Force Ones. It's $30 more, and this is hot garbage. I can't believe that Nike released this promoting that, because they had to have known full well that it was gonna crease more, because it's not like they didn't do any testing, right? And it's not that there's a chance I just got a really bad version of this shoe and it was on a bad part of the hide. But this is so much worse than the regular Air Force Ones that there's no way this is a mistake, and it's absolute garbage. So Nike, you busted. These crease significantly worse, and you should be embarrassed. So that's the results. So let me know what you guys think, and thank you so much for supporting this video and my whole channel. It's the only reason we can afford to buy these shoes and really hold these brands accountable and make sure they're being honest about what they're promoting. So thank you guys. See ya.